Amen. Now, as far as I know, this is probably going to be the last message that I'll be teaching on covenant relationships, at least for a while now. And one of the things I wanted to mention was that Dr. George wrote the book about covenants, and he mentioned the different types of covenants in the book. And he speaks about the covenants that people make. And one of the ones that I really think is going to be coming to the forefront is what he calls the covenant trusted friends. You know, we all have friends, we all have people that we know, we all have people that we meet them on the street and it's like, yeah, okay, hi, I know who you are, you know who I am, and we talk. But when you get into a place where you have the covenant trusted friends, that's a point where you know these are people that are going to be with you for the rest of your life. You're not married to them, they don't have to be, but you know they will. They're people that you could trust with everything. They're people that you could completely trust that they would be there to benefit you or to help you. You would never have to worry about if they were ever going to turn on you. Covenant trusted friends. And I know Dr. George mentioned at different times, and he had asked at one point, somebody had asked him that if he would have had to go through the things that Jesus went through, and if he had been hanging on the cross, who he would be expecting to see at the foot of the cross waiting for him. And he says, well, obviously the first person he would be expecting would be his wife, Hazel, that she would be there. And then he says, Mervyn Meadowick. He says, Mervyn would be there. Well, you know, we all have people like that. People that we know are going to be through. And those are the people that we can end up developing the relationships with that will end up living or being a blessing to each other. People that we know we can trust. People that we know that they can get to know the sides of us that maybe aren't so pretty, but they're still going to be there. So we want to talk about covenants. I want to recognize again, I want to mention again, that not every covenant is the marriage covenant. You know, we use the marriage covenant because it's one that we're familiar with, but not every covenant is a marriage covenant when we make covenant. So we're not just speaking on marriage covenants, but we're speaking on all the different types of covenants, then you can figure out how the different things are going to apply to the covenants that we've been talking about. Did you know that God formed mankind for the purpose of establishing relationships with each other and not with things? You know, when we're talking about covenants, one of the things that has to come up is relationship. Because until you come into a relationship, you'll never start experiencing covenant. You know how these things normally develop is you meet somebody. And there's something that attracts you to them, whether it just be the way they're talking, or just they have the same type of ideas, or if it's from the opposite sex, it might be the way they look. Something attracts you to them and you say, I want to get to know this person better. And then you start developing a friendship. And you start finding out more and more about each other, and you start finding out whether they're on the same wavelength as you are. And this is something that's going to take time. You know, we always hear about, well, it was love at first sight. And personally, I think that's a little bit of a fallacy for most people. I think it's need at first sight, lust at first sight, but rarely love. I got a few amens, that's good. But what happens in those situations, you get to meet somebody and something attracted you to them, whether it was the way they talked, whether it was the visions they had, whether it was the dreams, but something about me says, and this is, even with two guys or two women, you meet something, you'll see something just clicks. And you go, yeah, this is a person I want to get time to know more. And there's other people you meet after the first 5 minutes, you go, I know about all I need to know of them. And that's not saying there's anything wrong with them. It's not connecting somehow. Well, when you start taking the time now to develop the relationship, and I'm going to use two guys as an example. So two guys meet, and they say, there's something about this person I like. Let's go for coffee. So you go for coffee, and you start talking about more ideas and different things. You go, hey, yeah, that's great. Well, there's a ball game on this afternoon. You want to go watch a ball game together? Yeah, let's go watch the ball game. And they're yelling and cheering, and they've got everything. Yeah, this is great. Hey, we got the same team. We got the same whatever. We can discuss this. And the relationship starts developing. All of a sudden, they're helping each other build stuff. They're helping each other construct. And the relationship deepens on every level. Now, I'm talking normal relationships. I'm not talking the perverse stuff. The relationship deepens, and all of a sudden they start, here's two guys, and we go like, hey, this is sort of neat. And then it might take years. But one day also one's going to go through something, and he's going to trust the other one enough to share some of the trouble he's going through. And it just moves into another, and that's where it starts moving into a covenant relationship. Now you can start talking about where I'm hurting as well as all the good stuff. See, a lot of people never move into that level of covenant relationship, and because they don't, they'll never have somebody that they can open up to when they're hurting. Everything has to stay, the facade, where we smile and we go, yeah, okay, we're great, I can handle it, and then they go and blow their heads off later. Why? Because they don't have somebody that's there as a covenant friend. They have never taken the time to develop that relationship. Now I say these things don't happen overnight. They will not happen overnight. In fact, if you try to make them happen overnight, you're probably going to end up finding yourself getting slapped across the face or something much quicker than you want to. You're going to find yourself with a knife in your back. Because you're going to be opening up and trusting the wrong person. And then all of a sudden what's going to happen, the things that you have shared are going to be used against you instead of trying to help you. Now the same thing happens when a man and a woman meet. They meet and there's something that attracts them immediately. And for most men, it'll probably be the way she looks. Wouldn't she look good on my arm? Wouldn't I look good if she were on my arm? That's usually about how it goes. That's where it starts. Now, of course, we're all too spiritual to admit that. So we all talk about the deep spiritual connection we have. And we don't know what we're talking about. That comes later. The deep spiritual connection that I could just see how spiritual she was. And when people do this, when I go through marriage counseling, I say, okay, so even though she was a dog, you still wanted to go out with her? Well, no. Okay, then let's be honest here. What was it that first attracted you? And we start looking at those things, but then too often, people try to move these things along without allowing the connection to develop, and then they end up finding out all of a sudden, this isn't what I wanted. These things take time. You don't build a covenant connection. You don't jump into covenant relationships overnight. You take time to build and to discover and to find out what the strengths are, to find out what the weaknesses are. And then as time moves on, you'll come to a place where there's a greater and greater trusting, a greater and greater understanding. And then all of a sudden you'll come to a place to say, this is a person I want to spend my life with. Now Hollywood has done a good job of convincing us that these things have to happen overnight or instantly. I saw her eyes in a crowded room, and I saw her face. It doesn't. That's not life. That's not life. These things take time to build, and you will find that most times that people don't want to take the time ahead of time to build that connection are going to have to take it later. Now, the other thing, of course, is in some cultures it's still not uncommon for the husband to go and find your longtime covenant partner, or for the father to go find your longtime covenant partner, and then you don't have to worry about it. Isn't that easy now? We're not suggesting that. We're saying it happens. Where Brian would meet together with a suitable father of a suitable person for Madison. A young man who was on his way up, upwardly mobile, making good money. Good looking. Well, okay, looks can... Nice guy, pleasant to his parents. 2 eyes and a nose, 2 arms is good. Not overly pierced. So then Brian would get together with the young man's father and they would discuss, and the young man's father would say, my son needs a wife and you've got a single daughter. Like she's 13, this should be almost time now to start. So then Brian and the other man would discuss the terms and say, well, okay, this is great. And then one day, Madison would just be told, this is your husband. Now cover up everything except your eyes, and we'll see to it that he takes